The clipboard hit the metal desk with a crack that echoed across the warehouse floor. Conversations died mid-sentence. A forklift idled in place, its engine humming into the sudden silence. Someone's coffee tipped, a dark line creeping toward the edge of a workbench. Trent Wallace stood red-faced in the office doorway, tie loosened, jaw tight. He pointed straight at Daniel. "You're finished. Pack your stuff. You're done here." Every eye turned. Daniel didn't flinch. He held a thin folder against his chest, fingers steady, shoulders squared. Only the tightening at the corner of his jaw gave anything away. No one stepped in. No one even coughed. Then Trent's phone rang. He glanced at it, irritated, and declined the call. The silence thickened. It rang again. This time he looked at the screen longer. His expression shifted, just slightly. 2 hours earlier, the warehouse felt ordinary. Midwestern sunlight filtered through high windows, settling over rows of machinery stamped with the company's name: Hallbrook Industrial, family founded, Ohio proud, 73 years running. It had a reputation for steady paychecks and long careers. Men retired from here. Fathers brought in their sons. That reputation had started to thin. Trent Wallace had been promoted 3 months ago, shipped in from corporate with polished shoes and sharper ambition. He talked about efficiency the way some men talked about faith. Numbers first, optics always. Since arriving, he'd trimmed departments, eliminated overtime, and let go of employees who'd worked there longer than he'd been alive. Cleaning house, he called it. The culture shifted. Conversations lowered when he walked by. Meetings became performances. Daniel Reyes didn't perform. A widowed father with an 8-year-old daughter, he moved through the floor with quiet steadiness. He knew every station, every worker by name. People trusted him. He listened more than he spoke. What they didn't know was that Daniel had just returned from headquarters. The majority owner, his father, had asked him to observe operations anonymously. No titles, no special treatment, just watch. So Daniel watched. He took notes. He stepped outside for occasional private calls. And that morning, tension had been building again on the warehouse floor. The morning safety meeting started like any other, with workers gathered in a loose semicircle near the loading bays. Trent stood in front, tablet in hand, pacing slowly as if the concrete floor were a stage. "I walked your line yesterday," he said, eyes landing on Daniel. "Loose packaging. Labels crooked. That's sloppy." A few men shifted their weight. No one spoke. Daniel kept his hands folded in front of him. "We met quota," he said evenly, "and we passed inspection." Trent gave a thin smile. "That's not the standard anymore." The words hung there. He stepped closer. "Maybe this department needs new blood. Someone who understands urgency." Across the circle, an older mechanic stared at the floor, jaw tight. Another worker folded his arms but said nothing. Silence settled like dust. Daniel nodded once, pulled a small notebook from his back pocket, and wrote something down. Trent noticed. His eyes narrowed. The meeting ended, without applause, without questions. Just quiet dispersal. An hour later, when word came that a critical shipment was running late, Trent finally had the excuse he'd been waiting for. The supplier truck rolled in nearly 40 minutes late, brakes hissing as it backed toward the dock. Before the driver even stepped down, Trent was already striding across the floor, jacket flaring behind him. "This is on you," he barked at Daniel, loud enough for the entire shift to hear. "Do you have any idea what delays like this cost?" A few heads turned. Others pretended not to notice. Daniel checked the manifest calmly. The delay was confirmed region-wide. Storm system in Kentucky slowed the route. Trent moved closer, invading his space. Incompetence costs this company thousands. Some workers drifted nearer, forming a loose circle without meaning to. A wrench slipped from someone's hand and clattered across the concrete, the sound sharp in the silence that followed. "I don't need excuses," Trent said, voice rising. "I need results." Daniel's hands stayed steady on the paperwork. For a brief second, he glanced at his phone. One missed call. The contact name read simply, Dad. He locked the screen and slid it back into his pocket. Across the floor, Trent's expression hardened. He'd made up his mind. Now, back in the present, Trent made sure everyone was watching. He stepped into the center of the warehouse floor and motioned for the crew to gather. Engines shut off one by one. Boots scraped against concrete. The air felt tight. "This," Trent announced, gesturing toward Daniel, "is what happens when leadership fails." Daniel stood a few feet away, folder still in his hands. "You're finished," Trent said flatly. "Pack your things. You're done here." A murmur rippled, then vanished. Daniel held Trent's gaze. "Are you certain?" The question was calm, almost gentle. Trent let out a short laugh. "Security will escort you out." Right then, his phone rang again. Irritated, he glanced at the screen. Same caller. This time he answered. The warehouse heard only his side. "Yes, I did." A pause. "Wait, he's here?" The color drained from his face. His shoulder stiffened. Across from him, Daniel didn't move. He just watched, steady and unreadable. Trent lowered the phone slowly, as if it had grown heavier in his hand. The warehouse waited. No one moved. Even the forklift engines had gone silent. Daniel's voice, when he spoke, was steady. "My father prefers not to repeat himself." The words didn't land all at once. They settled. Trent blinked. "Your father?" A beat passed. "The owner?" he whispered. Daniel nodded once. "I was asked to spend a few weeks here," he said calmly. "No titles, no announcements. Just observe." He held up the folder slightly. "Management culture, terminations, complaint patterns." I documented everything. The circle of workers stood frozen, eyes shifting between the two men. "I warned headquarters about fear-based practices," Daniel continued. "About cutting people without review, about intimidation." Trent's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Daniel's expression never changed. "I asked if you were certain." The stillness felt absolute, like the building itself was listening. And in that silence, Trent's authority began to slip from his grasp. Trent cleared his throat, forcing a brittle smile. "This is a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "I didn't have the full context." A bead of sweat traced down from his temple, disappearing into the collar of his shirt. His earlier confidence had thinned into something restless. Around them, employees exchanged quiet looks. The older mechanic who'd stared at the floor earlier stepped forward, stopping just beside Daniel. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Two security guards lingered near the office doorway, uncertain now, their attention shifting from Daniel to Trent. The phone in Trent's hand rang again. He swallowed and tapped speaker. A calm, measured voice filled the warehouse. "Trent, pack your things." No anger, no raised volume. Just finality. Trent's lips parted, but the words never formed. The clipboard slipped from his fingers and hit the concrete with a hollow snap. This time, no one rushed to pick it up. The shift in the room was unmistakable. And what followed would reach far beyond this floor. The investigation began before the end of the day. Corporate compliance officers arrived quietly, badges visible, expressions neutral. They requested files, pulled security footage, and interviewed employees behind closed doors. For the first time in months, people spoke without glancing over their shoulders. The findings were not subtle. Termination records showed patterns. Older employees dismissed without progressive discipline. Emails revealed pressure to reduce headcount regardless of performance. Production logs exposed safety shortcuts designed to inflate quarterly numbers. HR complaints had been documented, then buried. Within 48 hours, the board placed Trent on suspension pending formal review. By the end of the week, the decision was final. Terminated for misconduct. His severance voided under the company's ethics clause. The HR director received a formal reprimand and was reassigned under supervision. Then came the reforms. An anonymous reporting hotline launched company-wide. Leadership audits were scheduled quarterly. Anti-retaliation protections were written into policy with clear enforcement language. Supervisors were required to complete accountability training before retaining authority. Several employees who had been let go were contacted personally. Some accepted reinstatement. Others chose financial compensation and moved on with dignity intact. A regional business journal ran a modest headline. Regional manager removed after culture audit. Daniel declined every interview request. By the following month, the noise had faded. What remained was something quieter, measurable change settling into place. Weeks later, the warehouse felt different. The machines still hummed. Orders still shipped on schedule. But the tension that once lived in the corners of the room had lifted. Conversations no longer stopped when a supervisor walked by. During morning meetings, people offered suggestions without staring at their boots. The interim manager, a steady woman named Carla Nguyen, held round-table check-ins every Friday. No speeches, just listening. Daniel returned to his regular duties by choice. No special office, no title on the door. One morning, before his shift, he walked his daughter to the elementary school entrance, kneeling to straighten the strap on her backpack. She hugged him twice before running inside. Back at work, the older mechanic approached him quietly. "Thank you," he said. Daniel shook his head. "It wasn't about me." Later that afternoon, the factory floor ran smooth and steady. No raised voices, no fear in the air. Just work being done the way it should have been all along. How many leaders mistake volume for strength? How many believe authority comes from humiliation instead of responsibility? And how many good workers stay silent every day just to protect a paycheck? Sometimes real authority doesn't announce itself. It walks in quietly. It listens. It watches. And when the moment comes, it answers for what's right. True leadership doesn't belittle. It doesn't perform. It protects the people who make the work possible. And when it fails, it accepts consequences. If you've ever witnessed someone abuse power or lived through it yourself, what do you believe should happen in that moment? Should leaders who humiliate employees ever be given second chances? Share your thoughts below. And if you believe dignity, not ego, defines real strength, stay with us.